There are certain phrases that do not merely pass through the ear, but pierce the fabric of our understanding. Phrases that stand like mirrors in the wilderness of human thought, forcing us to see ourselves not as we wish to be seen, but as we truly are. The sentence, "Success does not prove that you are talented. It only proves that you are not poor," belongs to this category of unsettling truths. It arrives like a gust of wind that extinguishes the candle of illusion, yet simultaneously unveils the far greater expanse of stars above. For in its blunt simplicity, it shakes the very foundation of how we perceive the link between achievement, worth, and identity. At first, this assertion appears almost cruel. It strips away the comfortable story that success, in and of itself, testifies to inner greatness, to skill, to intelligence, or to moral superiority. Instead, it reduces the polished symbol of success to a pragmatic survival marker. Evidence, not of brilliance, but of having escaped poverty's crushing grasp. The thought unsettles us because it diminishes one of our most cherished myths. For generations, we have been conditioned to believe that the successful stand as monuments of human excellence, chosen by destiny or refined by their own talents into exemplars of superiority. Yet when this belief crumbles, what remains is a landscape that is both starkly sobering and profoundly clarifying. To understand this idea, let us imagine the night sky. We look at constellations and marvel at their patterns, tracing mythological creatures and heroic figures across the heavens. Yet those constellations are illusions, born not from cosmic design but from the human mind, projecting stories onto scattered stars. Success, in the same way, is a constellation. We look upon wealth, status, and recognition, and we project onto them the myths of genius and greatness. But behind the alignment lies mere circumstance, timing, environment, opportunity, and luck. The stars do not intend their shapes, and success does not inherently prove superiority. It proves only that someone has escaped the void of poverty, the way a star escapes invisibility by burning, just brightly enough to be noticed. To call success proof of not being poor is not to dismiss its value, but rather to reposition it in the hierarchy of meaning. Poverty is not merely the absence of money, it is the absence of security, freedom, and dignity. It is a weight that constrains human possibility, demanding that every ounce of energy be spent on survival rather than creation, reflection, or growth. When one is poor, the horizon narrows until life becomes a daily battle for sustenance. Success, therefore, is a release from this suffocating grip. To not be poor is to breathe more freely, to have access to choices, to a stage on which one's voice may finally be heard. Yet breathing does not prove mastery, and standing on a stage does not prove genius. It proves only that the chains of poverty have been broken, at least temporarily. This reframing forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Why do we equate prosperity with worthiness? Why do we assume that those who rise must be better, sharper, more deserving than those who do not? Perhaps it is because human beings crave order in chaos. We are storytellers by nature, and we long to believe in a world where fortune is distributed fairly, where effort and virtue inevitably bear fruit. It is far less comforting to acknowledge the truth that many succeed not because they are the most capable, but because circumstances aligned in their favor. Birthplace, family, education, networks, timing, and even random chance can all tilt the scales. To admit this is to admit that life is not always meritocratic, that our notions of fairness may be more myth than reality. And yet, there is a paradox. If success does not prove brilliance, it still carries immense weight, because the absence of poverty is itself transformative. It creates the conditions under which brilliance, if it exists, might be revealed. Imagine a poet with words burning in his soul, but whose hands are too busy hauling stones to write a single line. Imagine an inventor whose mind brims with solutions, but who spends every waking hour struggling to feed her children. Without escaping poverty, their genius remains invisible, swallowed by necessity. Success, then, is not evidence of genius, but it is the gate through which genius might finally enter the world. In this light, success becomes less a crown of superiority and more a doorway of possibility. To succeed is not to prove one's greatness, but to escape the conditions that conceal greatness. And once escaped, a new test begins. What will one do with the freedom that survival has granted? Will one use it to shine more deeply, to create, to expand, to uplift? Or will one merely rest in the illusion that prosperity itself is proof of worth? Consider the sailor who crosses a stormy sea. He steps ashore, alive. His survival is not necessarily proof that he was the greatest navigator. Perhaps his boat was sturdier, perhaps the winds favored him, or perhaps fate simply spared him while others drowned. Yet to stand on dry land is no small thing. It proves not mastery, but endurance. It proves not brilliance, but that he is not among the drowned. In that, there is both humility and relief. Thus, when we say, success does not prove that you are talented, it only proves that you are not poor. We are invited into a humbler and more honest way of viewing human achievement. It tempers our envy toward the successful, for they are not always paragons. It softens our judgment toward the unsuccessful, for their obscurity may conceal unexpressed greatness. And it reminds us that success, while powerful, is not the ultimate truth of human value. It is a shield, an armor, perhaps even a passport, but it is not the soul itself. This introduction is not meant to diminish the importance of striving or the dignity of achievement. Rather, it seeks to lift the veil of illusion so that we might see more clearly. Let us celebrate survival, yes, but let us not mistake it for evidence of genius. Let us admire those who have climbed beyond poverty, but let us also honor those whose brilliance remained trapped in its shadows. For in doing so, we approach a more compassionate and truthful understanding of what it means to be human. The phrase, success does not prove that you are talented. It only proves that you are not poor, unfolds like a prism. When you turn it in your hands, different beams of light scatter in every direction, revealing dimensions that are both practical and deeply existential. To dwell on its core themes is to recognize that beneath its sharp simplicity lies a complex meditation on wealth, worth, survival, illusion, and truth. The first theme that emerges is the disconnection between appearance and essence. Humanity has always wrestled with this tension, the glittering surface versus the hidden depths. Success, in its common form, is a surface phenomenon. It is measurable, visible, and widely recognized. The cars one drives, the home one owns, the titles one holds, the applause one receives. These outward emblems persuade the world to believe in one's capability, yet they are only symbols, not essences. To confuse success with talent is to mistake the mask for the face, the shadow for the body. This disconnection reminds us of an ancient paradox. What is celebrated is not always what is real, and what is real is not always celebrated. Intertwined with this is the theme of survival versus mastery. Poverty is not simply a lack of possessions. It is a gravitational field that bends every choice, every dream, every breath toward survival. The poor live within this distortion, where daily life demands ceaseless trade-offs between hunger and dignity, work and rest, existence and collapse. Success, in this framing, becomes evidence not of brilliance but of escape. It is the proof that someone has managed to break free from the crushing gravity of poverty's orbit. But escape from gravity does not make one a master of the cosmos. It only places one among the stars, where mastery may or may not emerge. Success proves only freedom from constraint, not the skill with which that freedom will be used. Another central theme is the illusion of meritocracy. From childhood, we are often told that hard work leads to success, that effort and perseverance inevitably bear fruit. It is a comforting story, for it frames the world as just and orderly. But this phrase punctures the myth by pointing to the silent forces beneath the surface: inheritance, connections, timing, social structure, and the randomness of fate. The world is not a fair arena where talent always triumphs. It is a labyrinth of unequal gates and hidden doors. To acknowledge this does not mean denying effort or dismissing responsibility, but it does mean resisting the simplistic narrative that success is pure proof of superiority. Instead, it invites us to see success as a negotiation between personal endeavor and the caprices of chance. Closely tied to this is the theme of humility. To accept that success proves only the absence of poverty is to embrace a humbler stance toward life. It softens arrogance, for the wealthy cannot so easily claim that their position proves innate brilliance. It also softens despair, for the poor cannot so easily conclude that their lack of success proves incompetence or inadequacy. Both arrogance and despair dissolve when we recognize that success and poverty are not absolute verdicts on worth, but reflections of circumstance. Humility then becomes the bridge across the chasm between the successful and the struggling, reminding us of our shared fragility in the face of fortune. The phrase also carries within it the theme of hidden brilliance. If success does not prove genius, then the absence of success does not prove the lack of it. This reframing restores dignity to those who labor unseen. How many luminous minds have been extinguished by the demands of poverty? How many artists, thinkers, and inventors lived and died unknown, not because their light was dim, but because the darkness around them was too consuming? This theme compels us to look again at the world, to search for wisdom not only in the palaces of the prosperous, but also in the humble corners where survival eclipses expression. There is also the theme of liberation and responsibility. If success grants freedom from poverty, it simultaneously bestows responsibility. To be free from the constant weight of survival is to stand at a crossroads. One can use that freedom to explore, create, expand, or to hoard, indulge, and stagnate. Success alone does not define character. It merely reveals it. In this sense, success is less a crown than a mirror, reflecting who we already are once the immediate necessity of survival no longer dictates our every move. Finally, the statement echoes a universal theme of illusion versus truth. Human beings are perpetually weaving stories, crafting illusions to make sense of the chaos of existence. Success, in society's eyes, often functions as such an illusion, an easily visible shorthand for worth. But truth, as this phrase insists, runs deeper. Success is not the essence of talent, nor the evidence of brilliance, but a circumstantial marker of escape from poverty. To pierce this illusion is to step closer to reality, to see the architecture of existence with clearer eyes, even if that vision is unsettling. Taken together, these themes weave a tapestry of understanding. The phrase is not a condemnation of success, but a reorientation of perspective. It insists that we look beyond the shiny surface and into the deepest structures beneath. It is both a caution and a comfort. Caution against mistaking wealth for wisdom, and comfort in knowing that lack of wealth does not equal lack of worth. It calls us to humility, to compassion, to a recognition that survival and brilliance do not always coincide. That in its core, this idea urges us to shift from worshipping success as proof of greatness to viewing it as a threshold, a necessary but not sufficient condition for the unfolding of deeper truths. It whispers to us that greatness, if it exists, lies not in escaping poverty alone, but in what one chooses to do once free from it. The mind often grasps truth not only through logic but through story, through the timeless language of symbols and allegories. When we look at the idea, success does not prove that you are talented, it only proves that you are not poor. We can imagine it unfolding like a series of fables whispered by the universe itself. Each story offers a lens, a parable, a way of seeing the naked truth that hides behind society's dazzling disguises. Consider first the tale of two seeds. Both are born from the same tree, each carrying within them the full potential of a forest. One seed falls upon fertile soil, where rain is abundant, and sunlight tenderly kisses its skin. The other lands upon a barren rock, where cracks thirst endlessly for water. The first seed grows, unfurls, becomes a tree admired by all who pass. What a mighty seed this must have been, they say, marveling at its height. The second seed struggles, shrivels, and withers. No one praises it, no one warns it, yet both seeds carried equal potential. Both bore within them the same design of greatness. What separated them was not essence but circumstance, the soil, the sun, the rain. Success, in this story, is not proof of a seed's strength, only proof that it was fortunate enough to land where growth was possible. Now picture a vast river where countless boats drift. Some boats are made of strong oak, reinforced with sails that catch the wind. Others are fragile rafts tied hastily together. The river is wild, full of rapids, whirlpools, and rocks. When a boat reaches the far shore, people cheer, declaring what skillful sailors they must have been. Yet not every sailor who arrived was a master navigator. Some were simply blessed with sturdier boats, or caught in favorable currents, or spared by chance when storms struck. Meanwhile, some of the most skillful sailors drowned because their vessels were weak, or the currents merciless. Here again, survival proves a rival. not mastery. To conflate the two is to overlook the role of the unseen tides of circumstance. There is also the allegory of the masked performers. In a grand theater, actors wear ornate masks. Some masks glitter with gold, catching the light, while others are plain or even cracked. The audience applauds those in golden masks, believing they must surely be the most talented, the most worthy of admiration. Yet when the masks are removed backstage, the truth emerges. Some of the plain masked actors carried brilliance in every movement, but the audience never saw it. The mask's symbols of wealth and status dictated perception more than the actual performance did success. Then is like the golden mask. It captures attention, it commands applause, but it does not always reveal the truest artistry beneath dot. Or imagine a library full of books. Some are placed on the highest, most illuminated shelves, where everyone can see and read them. Others remain hidden in dusty corners, never discovered. People assume that the books on the golden shelves must contain the greatest wisdom, for why else would they be so prominently displayed? But placement in the library is not about content, it is about luck, about who placed them where. The unread book may contain the poem that could change a generation, yet it withers in silence. The displayed book, though ordinary, becomes celebrated. In this metaphor, success is shelf placement, not the quality of the words themselves. These narratives converge upon the same deeper truth. Survival, visibility, and recognition are not synonymous with inner greatness. They are external conditions, powerful but incomplete. They decide who is seen, who is heard, who is remembered, but not necessarily who is most profound. Yet we must also recognize the bittersweet paradox. Though success is not proof of brilliance, it is often the gatekeeper to its revelation. A seed on barren rock may wither before anyone knows what kind of tree it might have become. A sailor with great skill but a broken boat may never reach shore to tell the tale of his mastery. The actor behind a plain mask may never perform for the adoring crowd. The unread book may never inspire, no matter how luminous its words. Success does not create brilliance, but it creates the stage upon which brilliance can be revealed. Without it, brilliance can be buried alive. This paradox echoes in the story of an ancient craftsman. He was said to carve statues so lifelike that birds mistook them for perches. But he was born in poverty, and his days were spent hauling stones for others. At night, by the dim flame of an oil lamp, he carved scraps of wood. His works were never seen by kings or scholars. They were burned as firewood by those who could not afford to keep them. Centuries later, a fragment was found buried in the earth, and the world marveled at its beauty. Yet for the craftsman himself, recognition never came. His failure to escape poverty obscured his genius during his lifetime. Success did not measure his talent, but without success, his talent was condemned to silence. What these allegories reveal is not cynicism, but a call for deeper perception. They tell us to look beneath the mask, beyond the glittering soil, past the shine of the golden shelves. They remind us that poverty hides brilliance as effectively as success sometimes masquerades as talent. And in this realization lies a profound challenge: to train our eyes to see beyond the obvious, to recognize that greatness may live in uncelebrated places, that truth often hides in silence rather than applause. The symbolic narratives also hint at a more cosmic dimension. Perhaps life itself is a theater in which we mistake roles for souls, costumes for character, outcomes for essence. Success and poverty are not the final verdicts of reality, but shifting masks worn in the play of existence. The deeper truth may be that our worth cannot be measured by fortune or its absence, but only by the light that burns within, whether or not the world ever sees it. And so, the phrase, when carried into the realm of story, becomes more than a critique of material illusions. It becomes an allegorical mirror, reflecting back to us both the fragility of circumstance and the resilience of essence. It cautions us not to mistake the bright boats that arrive for the only skilled sailors, not to assume the glittering masks conceal the greatest actors, not to worship only the books upon the highest shelves. It asks us to look again, more deeply, more humbly, more compassionately. It is one thing to understand a truth in the realm of philosophy and metaphor, and another to weave it into the living fabric of everyday existence. The phrase, success does not prove that you are talented, it only proves that you are not poor, begins as a conceptual spark, but if it remains only as an idea, it risks becoming a detached abstraction. The real challenge and the real gift comes when we integrate it into how we see ourselves, others, and the structures of the world we inhabit. To live with this awareness is first to transform how we perceive success itself. Most of us are raised to treat success as the highest proof of value, the seal of authenticity on our abilities and worth. Yet when we shift our gaze, we begin to see success less as a crown of superiority and more as a threshold of liberation. Escaping poverty, whether financial or existential, is not the end of the story but the beginning. This reframing can soften the anxiety of comparison. Instead of obsessively measuring ourselves against others' wealth or status, we can ask the deeper question: what am I doing with the freedom I have once survival is no longer my only concern? This movement away from envy or insecurity creates space for self-direction, for creativity, for a more grounded relationship to achievement. In practice, this recognition reshapes how we regard others. When we encounter the successful, our default tendency is often to attribute their position entirely to talent, intelligence, or discipline. While these qualities may indeed play a role, acknowledging the influence of circumstance and luck cultivates humility. It prevents the deed of the wealthy and powerful, reminding us that they are not always wiser or more deserving than those without. Likewise, when we meet those struggling in poverty, the phrase teaches us not to conflate their condition with a lack of brilliance. Poverty is a silencer, not necessarily a verdict. With this awareness, we are less inclined to dismiss, and more inclined to listen, to search for hidden radiances that the world's structures have left obscured. Compassion then becomes not pity, but respect, the recognition that unseen brilliance may dwell in unexpected places. This perspective also reshapes how societies might pursue justice. If success is not pure evidence of merit, then the inequality between the successful and the poor cannot be justified simply as the natural order of things. Systems built on the myth of meritocracy tend to excuse disparities, claiming that the successful earned everything and the poor failed by their own fault. But if success is largely evidence of escaping poverty, not of absolute superiority, then social responsibility shifts. We are called to create conditions where more seeds fall on fertile soil, where more sailors are given sturdy boats, where more books have a chance to be placed on the illuminated shelves. In real-world terms, this means investing in education, health, opportunity, and access not as acts of charity, but as acts of justice, ensuring that hidden brilliance is not forever buried under the weight of poverty. On an individual level, this truth has profound implications for how we pursue our own goals. To know that success is not proof of genius can be both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it prevents us from falling into arrogance when fortune favors us. Liberating because it releases us from despair. If recognition has not yet arrived, we may continue to cultivate our craft, our art, our discipline, not for the applause or the proof of superiority, but because these acts themselves are vessels of meaning. The absence of external success does not mean the absence of internal worth. The act of creation, of striving, of embodying one's truth, remains valid even if the world never grants its seal of approval. At the same time, those who have achieved success are invited to view it not as an end, but as an opening. Once one is freed from poverty, the question becomes, what next? Will success be used merely to reinforce one's comfort and status, or will it be used as a stage to amplify truth, beauty, and contribution? Survival without expression risks becoming stagnation, but survival coupled with purpose transforms into legacy. Thus, success is not a final verdict, but a responsibility, a call to action. This awareness also transforms how we measure time and legacy. If success is simply proof of not being poor, then history's heroes are not always those crowned in their lifetimes. Many lived in obscurity, only to be recognized centuries later. Think of Van Gogh, who died poor, yet painted canvases that now hang as immortal testaments to human depth. His lack of success did not negate his genius. It only meant that poverty veiled it until time lifted the mask. By recognizing this, we become less anxious about immediate recognition and more focused on authenticity. What matters is not the applause of the moment, but the truth one leaves imprinted on existence. In daily life, the statement calls us to treat each encounter with deeper reverence. The cab driver may carry stories of brilliance hidden beneath the necessity of labor. The street vendor may hold insights into human resilience that surpass those of celebrated authors. The janitor may think with the quiet clarity of a philosopher, though their words are never published, by remembering that success proves only the absence of poverty, not the absence of wisdom. We learn to listen more deeply, to seek value where society often overlooks it. Ultimately, integrating this truth means we begin to detach worth from wealth and dignity from circumstance. It allows us to live with both gratitude and grace. Gratitude, if we are among the fortunate who have escaped poverty, and grace, in recognizing that our survival is not proof of superiority but of chance, effort, and circumstance intertwined. It softens the edges of envy, arrogance, and judgment, replacing them with humility, compassion, and responsibility. And so, this phrase, once understood not as an abstract cynicism, but as a practical lens, becomes a compass for life. It directs us away from shallow worship of success and toward deeper appreciation of survival, hidden brilliance, and the responsibility that freedom from poverty entails. It asks us to live more thoughtfully, to see more clearly, and to act more justly in the spaces where our lives touch the lives of others. We began with a phrase that felt almost like a wound. Success does not prove that you are talented, it only proves that you are not poor. It cut through illusions we often cling to, unsettling our cherished beliefs about achievement and worth. But as we unfolded its meaning, it became less of a wound and more of a mirror, reflecting back the deeper architecture of human life, that success, in its worldly form, is not the same as greatness, and that poverty, in its crushing silence, can conceal brilliance as easily as success can masquerade as talent. Now, as we reach the final turn of this journey, it is time to weave the threads into a unified vision. What emerges is not despair, but clarity. Success, when stripped of its false halos, becomes humbler but also truer. It is not a crown of superiority, but a threshold of possibility. To succeed is not to prove that one is extraordinary, but to step into a space where the extraordinary can finally breathe, if it exists. This reorientation frees us from illusions and prepares us for a more authentic way of living. The call of this truth is threefold. First, it is a call to humility. If we have succeeded, let us remember that it is not solely proof of our brilliance, but also of circumstance, of chance, of the soil upon which we fell. To claim otherwise is to worship an illusion. Humility allows us to hold our success with gratitude rather than arrogance, to see it as a gift as much as an accomplishment. Second, it is a call to compassion. If we encounter those who have not succeeded, let us resist the temptation to dismiss them as unworthy or incapable. Poverty is not an absence of talent, but often an absence of opportunity. Hidden brilliance may burn quietly in their shadows. Compassion invites us to honor that possibility, to listen, to support, to create spaces where unseen gifts can come to light. It teaches us that worth is not distributed by wealth, and that dignity belongs to all, regardless of circumstance. Third, it is a call to responsibility. To escape poverty is not the end of the journey, but the beginning. Success grants freedom, and freedom is not neutral, it demands a choice. What will we do with the time, resources, and space that survival has secured? Will we indulge endlessly in comfort, mistaking survival for greatness? Or will we use the gift of freedom to create, to serve, to expand the boundaries of human possibility? Success, once understood in this way, is not a final verdict, but an invitation. It invites us to live beyond survival, to transform freedom into contribution. To integrate this truth is to live with a new kind of vision. We no longer mistake the glitter of success for proof of genius, nor do we mistake the silence of poverty for proof of emptiness. Instead, we learn to see the hidden architecture beneath appearances. We begin to value authenticity over applause, substance over surface, meaning over recognition. We become less obsessed with chasing the illusion of success and more devoted to cultivating what is real, the light within us, the work we leave behind, the lives we touch. Imagine a world shaped by this awareness, a world where the successful do not sit on thrones of arrogance, but stand as stewards of responsibility. A world where the poor are not dismissed as failures, but seen as fellow travelers, whose unseen brilliance deserves space to unfold. A world where we measure greatness not by wealth or status, but by the depth of contribution, the authenticity of creation, the resonance of compassion. Such a world would not erase success, but it would restore its rightful place, as a threshold, not a verdict, as a tool, not an idol, And so, the transformational call of this phrase is simple yet profound. Awaken from the illusion. Do not mistake survival for superiority, nor poverty for failure. See success as liberation, not as proof. And once free, choose not to hoard your freedom, but to use it as a vessel for meaning. Let your life be less about being celebrated and more about being true. For in the end, what endures is not whether the world called you successful, but whether you lived authentically, whether you illuminated the lives around you, whether the essence of your being burned brightly. Even if unseen, success may prove only that you are not poor, but your choices after survival prove something greater, the truth of who you are. This is the deeper invitation hidden in the phrase, not to despise success, nor to glorify poverty, but to see both clearly, stripped of illusion, to walk humbly, to act compassionately, to live responsibly, to measure your life not by the applause of the world, but by the authenticity of your light. And if you dare to answer this call, then success, whether large or small, will no longer be the measure of your worth. It will simply be the soil upon which the seeds of your true greatness may finally take root.